Okay, it's Saturday night, and I'm pushing myself to sit down and get to it. Draw another robot drawing. They seem to be popular. I like drawing them. So here we go. What I've done is cut some 7x10 sheets of paper, make them a little bit smaller. So hopefully I can get this done in about half an hour. And I've made myself a little mini sketch here. I'm trying to think of variations of this robot theme that I do, this valley of these strange dead robots. So here I'm going to try and introduce a protagonist. And I'll try and do my usual shtick, which is explain and draw at the same time. So I'll get everything going at once. So I'm going to try and just rough in kind of along the lines of what I had sketched out there. I'm first thinking just of the main shapes of this body, this guy's body, trying to give it a little bit of dynamics, like he's pausing on the ridge of this hill. And I've got a bit of an angle here, just to make it a little bit interesting, because he's not in an actual action pose. I'll probably just do this and then go over it a little bit more and then get to the inking. And I'm sort of kicking myself because I haven't been drawing. Excuses. I haven't been drawing a lot, so not really completely feeling the flow of this, but that's what it's all about. Let's just get to it and try and activate. So what I always do when I don't feel it is tell myself, just keep going and work around the drawing. So that's what I'm going to do. Try and get the pieces together. So I have the idea for this composition that there should be a tree over here, some kind of dead tree. And I'm going to get the basics of that in. And I'm kind of rigging these shapes to bring you around and bring you back towards the guy, which we're seeing in silhouette on this hill. And then opposing that on the other side, we're going to have the lines of some kind of desert. And then over here as a separate mass to balance, you're always thinking about balance. I've got some of these rocks I always draw, which I'll elaborate on. So that's another mass opposing. And then we've got the silhouette of this giant robot here. It would be just his head. And I'm kind of roughing in the idea of a skull, but I'm going to robotify it. As I go. And I'll probably change this quite a bit as I get into it, but we'll see. Really what I want now is just the main masses. And then I had this idea to show down here a few other characters that are of unknown nature, maybe with weapons, that are marching towards this. So our hero is on this ridge tracking them, perhaps. I also had the idea to have the lighting coming in from the right-hand side, so I'm going to remind myself just by even just being very scribbly and doing a basic feeling of some lighting and some mechanics. The beginning of some mechanics here. And keeping it extremely loose, just thinking of shapes. And I'm thinking of eye paths, like I'm thinking of bringing the eye down to this is a secondary focal point, these characters. They would have long shadows. I'm probably going to have my ever-present sandstorm or mist. I'm using a very soft pencil. It's like a 2 or 3B, big chunky lead thing here. So it's like, it's almost gone. It's these Kohinoor clutch barrel things, and it's smearing, but I'm going to tell myself not to worry about that. Let's maybe zoom in a little bit here. Go over. All right, here we go. So let's get back to, I'm going to get a slightly smaller pencil and work on this figure since it's important. And I'm thinking about the basic anatomy of this guy first. He's got his arm bent, and then his wrist, he's holding this rifle of some kind. And I'm thinking about where he's holding it. And would just be behind the grip. Since this is a science fiction-y thing, I could just kind of make up some of it. He's got a clip in the weapon. I'm going to use a ruler because it speeds things up to keep things aligned. And really, when I draw these here, I'm not, as you can see, concerning myself too much about the fine details. I'm concerning about things like perspective and big silhouettes and shapes. Like this would be the sling. But I'm thinking of masses and that kind of stuff, so, and angles. So I'm going to think about this and silhouettes. I don't know if I said that or not. I told you I'm multitasking. He's got some kind of cap, desert cap. I guess the windstorms, the sandstorm's not too bad. You can see a bit of his face. It's probably cold. He's got the collar up. Let's have some breath coming from him. That gives interest. And here I'm just thinking really of the seams of the coat and the basic structure and silhouettes of each part. And like in my sketch, I'm going to have him with double sling bags across him. Kind of ambitious, see if I can draw all this in ink. And then I'm going to just think about where the bag is clipped on the other side of him. And then if he's got a long coat, like I had in my sketch here, let's put it up there. I've got to think about the wind and getting him braced. And, you know, the usual disclaimer to myself, I would usually take a lot longer than perhaps half an hour to do this. So it's a bit of a drawing challenge. Here I'm thinking about the wind to give an interesting shape and keep the dynamics of this angle. I'm thinking the wind's blowing the front of his coat open. He's perhaps got a vent at the back. And he's got some kind of long pants, let's say. This leg, I'm just checking the anatomy here. The pull lines would be from his buttocks here. And if we've got a light source coming this way, as I do in this picture actually with my lamp, the shadows would be gathering over here. I'm going to remember that for later. There'd probably be a shadow of his hand above the coat, showing that there's a distance here. He's not touching the coat. You're always thinking about proximities, things like that. You're thinking about the reality of the situation as much as you can. And I'm almost at the point where I'm going to start inking. As I've said in my other videos, you want to leave yourself enough wiggle room. Well, wiggle room's not the right word, but you want to leave enough space where you can improvise, because that's where, if you do get any magic to arrive, that's where it's going to happen. If you, this is my philosophy anyway, if you nail it in too tightly in the penciling, you fall into a mode where you're not actually designing and drawing and inventing in that moment. You're not taking that leap of faith. You're actually just kind of tracing, because you're kind of nervously trying to capture that previous magic that you might have felt. And when you do that, at least in my drawing life, I find that you kind of disengage. Something gets lost. I'm lowering this line here for the sand because I want the rifle here above, the silhouette of it to be clear above. And whatever arm I have here for this robot and his mouth, I'm going to have some kind of teeth and jaw because it looks scary. I want that in silhouette, and I want this crossing cleanly. You always want to be very careful where you cross your silhouettes of different elements. And in this sketch here, I had another tree back here, so I'm going to see if I want that. I think I might. I do need something there because there's a big empty space in the middle of this composition, and you need a bounce point to kind of keep your eye moving around. Now I'm thinking about scale here. This would be a much bigger tree if it's that far away, so I got to be careful about what I'm doing. Maybe I'll make that some rocks in the wind. I don't know. Try not to erase here. Yeah, probably I'll do something like that instead of a tree. Because if it was that far away, that tree would be much more enormous than this one in the foreground. So it's sort of a contradiction. This is like a skinnier tree here. I'm also going to contrive over here to remind myself to have this guy's shadow in line with the fact that the light's coming this way. Having this guy, a bit of a shadow contacting the tree or cast across this tree, which will give some interest. So I'm going to go to inking now because otherwise I know from previous experience that I'm going to go way over time. And this will get into the guts of it. This is my micron 0.08. You can see a bit of his mouth here. And he's got sort of a tight cap that's going to move my sketch up there, but I got the idea for this cap suggested because the other night I was checking out Apocalypse Now Redux on Prime, Amazon Prime. And the captain of the boat, if you know that movie, going upriver, he was wearing this kind of cool rain cap. That gave me an idea for something like this. So you're always trying to use things that you find. If you can plug them into something you're thinking about. Now here I'm primarily, again, thinking about silhouettes and elements. I'm trying to remind myself to go around the edges of things and make the silhouettes interesting. Here I'm thinking about a number of things. I'm thinking about where I'm going to put the pull lines. I'm going to think about the fact there's just a mild fold here on because his arm is just barely bent. So there'd be very little. If he's got gloves on, I'll fix all that up later. I've kind of learned that you can get away with a lot of stuff if you just kind of keep moving. And, you know, in real production art, for like a comic or whatever, you always have this fallback, at least. Well, in modern times, you have computers and you can always just go in with Photoshop and fix stuff up. And before that, traditional comic art, you know, you'd patch things or you'd maybe even, I think on some of the older comic artists, I see that they just cut a hole in the paper and put a new piece of paper below it or inside it. So you could always find a way to fix the original. Of course, it didn't make for a very nice original, but as anybody who collects art knows, in the old days of production art, comic art, it was just seen as a production item. And they didn't really care about the originals that much. And okay, I'm going to remind myself, just keep going. And I'm going to just kind of crank and try and get the basics in here. Go around the silhouette. It's kind of cool. SFE kind of weapon. When I look at it, this micron is a little bit thick, maybe for my purposes, but what the hell. I'm sure any real gun aficionados out there will know if I'm violating any cardinal rules of guns, but of course in science fiction land you can give yourself permission and do whatever you want. But on the other hand, I'm a Canadian and they took away all our guns here, so I'm not a gun expert. But again, it reminds me these are more things I need to research. like where would you have the contact point? I probably actually wouldn't be on the muzzle, so forgive me. The contact point of that sling would probably be further back, I would imagine. But these, I'm giving that as an example of the kind of questions I'm constantly asking myself. Like, you can make up stuff in a science fiction reality, but if you want to make it really believable, and this is what I like in the best stuff that I see, you give it that air of plausible details is the way I'd say it. Like here, I'm trying to think about the bag. Actually, is it how would it actually work? You want to put just enough in there that people feel like they can buy it. Here, I'm thinking about this coat. How would it flow? And it would catch here. There might be a wrinkle. And like I said, I'm reminding myself to just really keep moving. And I want some wind there for later. Sand. I'm just checking that I'm still in screen. So I'm at 16 minutes. So Paul's inner voice is saying, watch the timing, because I learned before, I'm using my iPhone and I'm working on setting up a better system. I think I've said that in other videos, but I do have a camera and all sorts of stuff to work on. But for now, I'm using my iPhone. So if for some chance this cuts out, I don't think I'm out of storage, but another disclaimer is if it does cut out at some point, it simply means that I ran out of storage and I'll just upload it anyway. So do not be shocked, faithful YouTube viewer. But see, now I hadn't been drawing and I just launched into this, so now I'm feeling that I'm warming up. I just changed this here because these were all much too equal. You're trying to avoid boring the viewer's eye, and you're trying to avoid doing things that violate nature, in the sense of nature is not mechanical. It's sometimes repetitive, like leaves or anything repetitive, but there's always variation built into it. Here, this wind of this breath from here, I've left a gap in this tree so that I can overlap it here. And what else can I do to this tree to make it more interesting? I'm trying to make an interesting silhouette to it. I'll start with giving it a bit of twist and roughness. Trees always have a twist, usually, due to the way they seem to grow. I'm not going to overdo it, because I'll save some of that for the further inking. And let me see, maybe we'll give this guy some seams on his pants. And he's got a patch here. This kind of makes it more rugged, like he's patched on something. And we'll do that here, but maybe something. Should it be different or the same? I will do the same, like maybe that's a repair that was done to his worn suit at the same time. Okay, let's get into this robot. He's the secondary guy over here. And I want to think carefully about this silhouette. He's got like a skull-like brow ridge and cheekbone. He's kind of an androidy robot like the others. And don't want to make him too humanoid, but it is interesting when they are somewhat. So he's got a mandible that's going to be open. Now I need a hinge of some kind. And I'm thinking about the perspective here to keep it believable and keep it consistent. And I'm jumping around and leaving some gaps because Sometimes you need that to not lock in too early. It's a bit of a tricky thing. If I try and draw each part to finish too soon, it can just make it too tight and stiff, which is really what you're always fighting. It's like a balance between injecting some of that looseness and vitality, but also keeping it accurate. You know, so accurate meaning that it's believably drawn and you're not just completely going nuts, letting everything be sloppy, because then it just looks sloppy to the viewer. So it's sort of a balancing act. And let's get him a bigger shoulder thing here. Now we're going to go around to make, I see I'm thinking of shapes too and silhouettes. I want to put some rivets or something in this silhouette. Some of this I may obscure when I do the shadows in a minute. What you find happens is that each thing can suggest more. So it's kind of like looking at clouds in the sky and dreaming into their shapes. Like things I've put earlier suggest new possibilities. Like I put a slot here. So now I'm suddenly thinking, okay, I had some of these cables. What about if this is like an inner shell that's been exposed and there's cables coming through there? So you sort of keep building on what you've done before. And as I've said in my other videos, the fun game of this is that there's a narrowing process though, because the more you add in, the less the possibilities are, because you've eliminated some by choosing one thing over another thing. So here I want to get to the part of having an elbow, and this guy's arm looks a little too short, see, unless he's coming more at us, foreshortened, which I guess I can show if I have some cables coming over, see if I can get a foreshortening effect. And hope that people don't notice too much. Of course, I just outed myself and told you that, so now you're all going to be looking at that, but what I've done in the build-up to this is give myself a framework to improvise upon, which is what I really think that's really what all comic art is. If you look at most classic comic art that we admire, people like Joe Kubert, I always talk about Alex Toth, but Joe Kubert, you can see that the guy was producing an incredible amount of work, and he would pencil in something loosely and just do it in the ink, you know, do the thinking in the inking, as they say. And he was so good at it that it's kind of the same thing. It's nothing new that I've invented. It's you're building a basic framework that you know will conduct the eye to where you want it to go. The rest you do on the fly. If you get too precious and try and like guarantee the result by like over penciling and finessing everything, again, you lose that sort of sketch mentality, which to me is the excitement of comics. And people like Jack Kirby that I just love, is that you could see the guy was just flying along and penciling like crazy. Then you had people like Mike Royer, my favorite inker, who would come in and just ink the hell out of it with his skills. I'm adding some rocks or something here in the foreground to give myself some more depth. And I think I'm going to just get into a suggestion of this fog here, and the first suggestion of these rocks, I'm thinking of three-dimensional forms. And how to fade them out into this mist as it goes back. And I'm stopping here because I don't want to run into Mr. Protagonist and you know, if I just ram the lines right into him, it's too cut out. You need some air, usually atmosphere. This is just to continue the suggestion that mountain ridge or whatever that is in the background is still there, making a compositional line. I'll probably adjust some of these darks and details, but I've got the basics knocked in. Then I'm going to knock in these guys here, the whoever they are, some kind of villains. I'm not even going to worry about it. Just get them. They're far enough away that I'm just going to have them mostly silhouettes. After all, these are kind of sketches, not finished, not super finished. It's not fine art. So I always have to keep telling myself that. You know what I'm going to do now, people, is have some fun and get one of these big old markers. Actually, maybe not this one. Let's see if I've got a brush marker. Got my, what is it, my Faber-Castell Pitt Artist Pen Big Brush. And I'm at the 26-minute mark, so I'm going to start bashing in some shadows. It's got a nice tip on it. I think I've used this one already, so it's a little degraded, so it's actually not as fine-pointed as when you first get these new from the store. They've got a sharper tip, and you can get a really nice fine line for the first, whatever, half an hour. And then it starts degrading, but I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to fire away with this. So this part of this robot would be in the shadows from this. I put black here because it's in the shadow from this rock formation here, which I probably will go back in on, but I'm going to get the main darks in here. And I want some texture here, like it's a little destroyed. And what you find is that decisiveness is important. So like I'm just giving these decisive, like, because sometimes that can carry the day, that if you're too half-hearted, something that's good but too half-hearted doesn't work as well as something that's actually overdone or faked in a sense, but you've done it with gusto. And again, I think of, in my running commentary here, I think of somebody like Jack Kirby that, you know, in his things like the New Gods or even the Fantastic Four before that, he was not known for doing realistic anatomy, and sometimes he just did outrageous exaggerations of, you know, if you want to get formal, he did outrageous exaggerations of anatomy. But he did it with such gusto and verve, whatever words you want to use, panache, that it carries your eye and it convinces you. So it's like your logical brain shuts up and just accepts it. So as an artist, it's again one of these balances you're running between, you know, how realistic, so-called, and accurate and fussy do you make it versus the emotional. And those are decisions you have to make in your style, like what your personal setting's gonna be. I mean, everything's up to you, you know. If you want to be a super kind of fussy artist that's my brain's beach balling because I'm trying to think of this lighting. If you want to be super fussy and accurate, which I have in me in spades, that analytical side, then you get into a tighter look. But on the other hand, if you go for the looseness thing, like I said earlier, that's fun too, although the danger to me is that you go too far and you just get into kind of soggy crap, you could call it, you know, where it loses the design or it loses the believability. So here I'm thinking about the pull. I'm thinking about clarity. Clarity is always very important. Like, I want this to read, and you're juggling the different priorities. So here I'm thinking about realistic shadows, but I don't want to lose this gun, for example, in his arm. In other places, you do want to lose stuff, lost lines. So it's very tricky. You're juggling, always juggling different priorities. And, you know, the thing of like overdoing it versus underdoing it. So here I'm telling myself, I've often in my drawings, because of that worry about doing it exactly, you know, technically, there's a side to me where in my self-analysis where I'm like, you're always like trying to make it too exact. And then you can get too fussy, and then you just, every artist knows this, there's a moment when you just kill the damn thing and it's just like, it just flops. You lose that vitality that you had. And then there's other times where you find that sweet spot. You have some great examples of that again with my hero Alex Toth, that some of his work, it was very, very nailed in, but then other parts of his career he really worked on loosening up. There's a story I blew some giant Xeroxes up called Mask of the Red Fox. I have them on my desk here. If I don't run out of time, I might even pull them out. But they're just super inspirational because he really let go and just loosened up, like, and you can see someone who's just at the peak of his like control and kind of winging it, right? It's like surfing, exactly like when you see an amazing surfer and they're riding the edge of that board on some giant wave, just balancing and pulling it out. It's kind of like that feeling. See, here I'm thinking about, see how this tree's going out? I need something probably to kind of darken up here and keep the eye back. It's a bounce point of darkness to keep you back in. If I left that too light, your eye would almost go there. Because really what you're always doing is you're balancing points of contrast, and you want the greatest contrast, or which was where the viewer's eye always goes. It seeks contrast, and it follows lines. Like here, I've purposely built lines to circulate around through the drawing. But you want to balance the points of contrast so the viewer's eye ends up where you want it to, not accidentally and distracted to the wrong places. I think I'm going to add some hatching in now. I might go back to my big brush. So that's your challenge, is as you're doing this stuff. I'm going to see, he's got his back here and it's too light here. So I'm going to see if I can get away with like casting some just tone across here as his lower back bends in. And then you'd have a bit of his shoulder blade there. And this is again where you're like, it's sort of a balance between getting enough, like say, realistic feeling of anatomy and lighting versus that kind of magical looseness. Another great one for this, like with his manga type stuff, is Miyazaki, Hayao Miyazaki. I've got these books here that he did. I'll show you one quickly if you haven't seen these. Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. Just fantastic. I'll maybe do another video on him, but let's leave him over here for spiritual inspiration. He just incredible stuff. I like it even better than Mobius. Let's make this clip like it's got ridges to guide it. I'm doing this a little fast, but what the hell. Think about lighting, so put some shadows underneath here. Probably need more technical details on that gun, but anyway, let's put some kind of thing here because this silhouette is too straight. So I want to put something up there that's a little more interesting. And again, I would fuss with this a lot more. See, I've got this ridge here from his coat. So now I need a line from that because it's going to sell it a bit more, like it's folded back. And let's fade this off a bit there. And again, here, let's fade this a bit. So it's rounded a bit where his buttocks would be. My eyes, as I'm doing this, I mean, you can't see me, but I'm scanning over the whole thing. I'm balancing the attention. I'm looking at the whole picture. Now, of course, we need some hatching on that robot or something to give it some more interest. I'm doing this just to muddy up his coat a bit because I love that gritty, like, it's like Clint Eastwood in the Unforgiven, in the movie Unforgiven he did. Just wonderful. Just that rough, kind of sweaty, gritty desert thing. Okay, now he's made footsteps, so let's dig him into the ground here a bit. And there's mist coming through, so, but we're implying that he's, where did his last footstep be? Probably over here somewhere. It's dug in the ground. So that's believability, like he's taken another step here and stopped. And let's get some more distance in this sand by putting finer and finer dots. Okay. I'm pushing myself to go faster here because, again, I think I'm good on storage, people, but you hear Paul's anxiety because I hate it when it did happen on one of my earlier videos. The darn iPhone just conked out because it was like storage limit. And I am pushing myself to, I've got stuff coming to have a better rig. Maybe even a 2-camera rig so you can see my mug yakking at you while I do this. But if that helps, which it probably wouldn't. But certainly for storage, using a camera would be better. See, I'm adding some kind of twig or something here because I didn't like the way this terminated. It was too dull. And what you want is not to have eye catches. Like, in other words, eye catch is where your eye ends up because of some dead spot or inattention. The viewer's eye stops circulating and it stops in a place you don't want it to. And those can be things like going out the sides, the corners of the page or the sides. But here I've got these focal points. I've got this guy, his face, he's got the gun, it points down to the people, and then you're going to circulate up to the robot. So you're kind of going between these things. You don't want it stopping in some random spot that's not important. So there's a hierarchy at work, something I'm going to talk about a lot in this and other videos. Like, you've got a hierarchy of importance. Not everything can be equally important. It gets philosophical. So you simply can't have everything be a focal point. So you have to decide what are the focal points of your picture, like where, in other words, where do you want your audience to look? And that has a lot of factors to it, but it's something you have to think about very carefully. Add some rivets. Rivets are always good. These would be giant rivets, probably because they're so far away, but what the hell. Yeah, you have to decide the priorities of what people are looking at. And then you design your composition to lead people there, and you try and remember that when you do your inking, that you're leading people around. You're a guide. It's not just like random anything. It's a designed experience. Excuse me, but what it is you're trying to create the illusion of effortlessness, which is that it's not design. You're not trying to point out, hey people, I'm guiding you around. I'm doing that now because this is purportedly a teaching video, so I'm trying to explain what I do, but usually it would all be silent and the reader would just read this or look at it and take it in, and they would be invisibly guided by your directions that you build in as an artist of where you want them to look. But the minute your artifice becomes obvious, then you're kind of losing. And that's like any creative thing, or movies where they're too, what you call, on the nose, and they're just laboring to make a point or be cool or be anti-cool and point out to you what they're doing. It can take you out of the thing. So if you do your job well, you design all this stuff in, but people don't not notice it consciously. So they don't go, oh, Paul put this lines in here to take your eye down there. Like, maybe some of you would see that, other times you wouldn't. But you'd only see that if you're an artist who understands this and you put your analytical cap on and you're thinking about this stuff, which I've suggested in my other videos to have a 2-mode brain, dual mode at least. It's probably more than 2, but you you want to be able to go emotionally like I'm kind of doing now. I'm not actually, I am talking, but I'm not super I'm just feeling it, and I'm drawing what I feel helps. And I'm trying to remind myself to stop when it's over, which I think I'm close to, though I need more wind and dust. But you use those different modes at different times. And see, this is getting a little, I'm darkening that in because I was finding these cables are getting a little lost in this cross here. I want you to be able to pick out which is robot and which is rock. So I'm putting these kind of cable lines on this. Another thing I'm remembering to do is not close in every line perfectly, because the super fussy, I mean, inking, again, it's a matter of philosophy, I suppose, but I do not like super fussy inking. I like verve and life, and my heroes like Mr. Miyazaki here, you can see it all over the place. There's gaps. I'm not showing it well probably on this, but there's gaps and looseness. And in the inking, not everything is like a technical line where it's just kind of everything's connected up. As I look through this, my thoughts go to, I still need more flow down through this arm. So I'm going to add more vertical lines going down this way to try and channel people down more, because it was stopping too much like that. A lot of these things are feeling, and you learn them by trial and error, and there's no absolute guarantee to them. So there's always an element of adventure. I mean, I can't count the number of times I've redone stuff. Any professional artist listening to me knows this. You know, you redo stuff, you fail, you make a patch, you sometimes even scrap it and completely start over. Every drawing is an adventure, which of course I think is, at least for me, it's what the appeal is. I don't actually know exactly what I'm going to draw each time. I have a sense of what I'm seeking, but it's a quest, you know, the quest for the drawing. Here I'm trying to imply that the robot is, whatever's left of him is fading out in that mist here. I think I might need more lines here, because this seemed too light, this area. So it's almost like there's some shadows that are, the rocks are going back a little bit and in, but I'm also, you can be your own lighting director and choose to put lights where you want on your stage set, you know? So if you go, okay, I need some more dark or middle tones here, or like I need some more darks here, for example, to sell these rock crevices, you just go ahead and do them. And that's again where I was talking about the adventure of this. You have to just kind of plunge in and commit. And then when you commit, your drawing has a mark on it, and you have to then assess it. Is it improving it, or is it, what's the opposite of improving? Ruining, deproving. No, that's not a word. But are you taking yourself closer to what really is working, or further away? Here I felt like his face would be cooler and more eerie if I put more shadows there, and that little tone there implies that the robot's a little bit bent robots. As you progress through your drawing, what I'm doing now is I'm getting a little more finer and fussy and more careful. And it's exactly like what you would find in something like oil painting. You want to do what they call your lay-in, or big rough strokes, broad strokes, without going crazy and killing it. But you can be kind of broader and looser at the beginning. And as you it's like a funnel. As you tighten in towards the end, if you feel it's working, then you can get a little finer in the important areas here and there. Of course, if you didn't think it's working, you'd probably have torn your hair out and scrapped it and gone and started drinking or whatever. But here I want mood here, so I need more darkness on this robot guy, and I need it turning into the, away from the light here more. Another thing you can do, I can't do it here because I've got my video, is to move your drawing far away from you, and or look at it out of focus. with your eyes, squint, because then you see the masses and you kind of see if it's reading. I think we need birds here. There's always some, like, you know, it's always reliable. The eerie birds flying by in the wind. And let's do more sandstorm. And again, if I cut out on you people, then forgive me, but this is like a longer video than I wanted. I'm at 45 minutes, and it's only a 7x10 card. You see, that was my attempt to restrain myself and not get into the super weeds of inking the hell out of it. But you know, you get going and it's fun, right? So here when I talked about things emerging, so I didn't plan this, but I've got this tone, and see how the birds, and this is fading up, and it's almost making a line that's leading to his eyes, which I like because it's the edge of a mass and it's taking you into this breath. So I kind of like that. I might put another bird or two bigger here just to balance. But I'm going to leave a bit of air there because you don't want to kill it with filling every moment of it with detail. I'm just putting a bit here to suggest that there's still wind and sky and maybe sandstorm up there. But like I said, I've learned lots of times what not to do, which is kill the drawing by adding too much. It's sort of like knowing when to stop is as important as knowing what to put in. And I think, who was it? Was it Alex Toth who said the whole thing? Or maybe his mentor, Noel Sickles, and other people. It's like learning what to put in, and then just that, and then draw the hell out of that and leave the rest. I've mangled the quote. People who are Toth aficionados will know what I'm talking about, but you find the essential elements and you draw them really well, but it's really a lot about knowing what to leave out, not just what to put in, because you can kill it. I'm about to take my own advice and end this. But there is also a thing at the end of just sometimes fine adjustments can make all the difference. Like here, for example, I think I need footsteps from these guys. So sometimes at the end, if you mess around with it a bit, you can actually think of things that will give some value. And again, it's a juggling act of deciding what's worth it or what's going too far. Sometimes when you develop an alarm system, you can get an alarm system inside yourself that goes off sometimes when you go, okay, that was clearly like too much. It's like it's almost going off now, and I'm kind of going like, dude, if you keep going too far, you're gonna start killing this drawing. So on the other hand, I think I'm finding things that I needed to fix, like this needed to turn more into the light. What you're trying to do in the moment is find the things that you would see later the next day where you walk in and something's obvious to you. Or maybe you'd see in some other person's drawing that you're not emotionally attached to, some other artist. You walk in and just go, they go, hey, look at my drawing. And if you're some mean ass guy, you go, oh, that's like, that foot's too big. And they'd be going, you know, and they'd get all hurt. So the advice I give to myself and to people is you got to develop that ability in yourself, is to be that guy to yourself without being overly harsh, but have that perception, the perception of someone who didn't like you and walked in and said, that head is way too big, you should fix that. So if you can develop that voice, you can, it's really the vision, not just the voice. The vision and the perception of being able to see that, then you can improve so much more because you're just being honest to yourself, and then you go fix it. Well, you know, it's a multi-stage thing. You got to perceive it, figure out what the right thing is to fix that will actually improve it and not make it worse, and then go do it and get yourself to do it. Sometimes that means, like I said earlier, just completely starting over. But you learn. I've done that endless times. When I used to do airbrush illustrations in the 80s for things like book covers or whatever, sometimes I'd just do the thing and realize I'd monkeyed something up, and then you redo it. But you had absolute certainty of the pathway because you'd done it once already. I'm balancing the blacks in these mountains here because I had a mass of like these lines, and then I had some dark spots in them, and your eye goes right to them. So I'm balancing out the amounts of these little black spots to make it more even. And I feel like here I need some of this wind here to connect over here. Because it's over here, I've got this wind, it should be going behind him and carrying through. It's this sandy wind in this story that I need a story for. I've got sort of some ideas, but I don't have a full story yet. It's a valley of these shattered robots, and this guy is investigating or trying to find the secret. And I got some ideas, so I'm working on it. But yeah, all these things take time. You kind of can't always force it. What did I say I'd get out? I said I'd get out the Alex Toth stuff. So bear with me. Do I have it handy? You can listen to me wrestle around. If this is a live stream, it would be even more entertaining. See if I have it. Oh yeah, here it is. Because this is basically done, this guy. I might mess with it a little bit, but that's basically done. This is a wonderful story that I printed out. What I did is I just scanned the comics. And I don't know if I've seen his original art sold online at somewhere like Heritage, but a while back I just scanned these and blew these up on photocopies. Let me see if I can make it a little bit bigger. So you've got the black and white results of unfortunately, of the color is still built in. But I just love the super loose inking and the graphic punch and design of what Alex Toth did here. I'm just going to give you a taste of it because I can only show so much, but it was in, what was it, Erie or not Erie? That's the DC House of Mystery or something. He's really just inking it so loosely. And again, it's plugged up a bit here because I did these off scans of the color comics. I wish I saw the actual black and white art. But I find this vastly inspirational, like the way he's inked this. See, he could be very technical and exact in some of his work, but in other places, he just really let it rip. And I love that kind of inking. It just gives it such strength. He's not worried about being fussy and being like super exact. But again, there's a complete skill behind it of thinking about lighting and design, overall page design. Sorry, I'm trying to control my iPhone zoom here so you can see this. So, yeah, fantastic art. And I blew them up. Someone asked me, why did you blow those up, bro? Because I want to see more closely what it would look like at the size that he drew his work at, and I could examine it, even though on some of his work, as people know, he actually did them print size. I don't think that story, I don't really know, but anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I think I could actually tickle this up a bit more, as they say, you know. I feel like this tree needs more interest, and it needs more roundness by adding more shadows to the far side. Alex is inspiring me. What would Alex say? I need my inner Alex. If he was right here, he'd go, son, you've made it too fussy. Because his hero, mentor, Sheldon Meyer, and other people would say that too. There was someone else he mentioned in his writings that was like that too. I think it was Sheldon Meyer, but other people too, who was a great cartoonist, and he kept showing his art to this person. Again, in the comments, if you're a Toth fan and you remember, but who it was, please tell me. But he kept showing this person, and they say that, and this, I guess he was trying to impress them in the start of his career, and they'd say, "That's very nice, Alex," because he'd drawn something really elaborate. Very nice, Alex, but you haven't learned yet what to leave out. And it was about simplification, right? So it's again finding that line, which he was always searching for. And he walked that walk, which is why I admire him. You can see it in his work if you know the body of his work. He was always trying to actually do that himself, not just tell other people to do it. Like, experiment, learn new things, learn what to leave out. And you can see that in his career, he finally did listen to that advice, because his style got way more graphic and simple. And you can enjoy all the different eras of it. But there you go. I'll sign it. What the hell? Sign it over here. What the heck day is it? I'm losing track. And it's 24/6/15. And yeah, I had fun drawing that, so I hope you enjoyed listening to that, and I will see you in the next video. Please, if you could, like this video if you like it, and maybe share it, subscribe, and see you next time. Thank you.